That bottle you grabbed for your anniversary dinner might taste like melted Jolly Ranchers. That premium white wine your neighbor swears by, probably made in the same facility as box wine. That expensive Chardonnay everyone orders at restaurants could be worse than the $12 bottle you walked past. We're ranking 10 white wines from absolute worst to surprisingly best. And what we discovered about number 3 will make you rethink everything you know about pairing wine with food. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll never waste money on bad wine again. Let's start at the bottom, and honestly, this one hurts to put here because so many people have nostalgia for it. White Zinfandel. Here's the thing nobody tells you. It's not actually a white wine. It's technically a rosé, but it gets lumped in with whites because of its sweet candy-like profile. White Zinfandel was born from a happy accident in the early 1970s when Bob Trinchero at Sutter Home bled off juice while trying to make a more concentrated red Zinfandel. Instead of dumping it, he fermented it. The result was a pink, sweet wine that exploded in popularity through the late 70s and 1980s. America went all in. The problem is that most white Zinfandel today has about as much complexity as a snow cone. Residual sugar can range from roughly 10 to 30 grams per liter, firmly and off-dry to sweet territory. For context, a truly dry wine is usually under 4 grams. Alcohol levels hover around 9 to 10.5%, making it one of the weakest wines on the shelf. Now, we're not saying it's undrinkable. On a hot day at a backyard barbecue, an ice-cold glass can be refreshing, but calling it a quality wine, that's where we draw the line. The flavors are one note. Strawberry candy, watermelon Jolly Rancher, maybe cotton candy if you're lucky. There's little to no terroir, no real vineyard expression, just sweetness. First winemaking aimed at people who don't actually like wine. The real kicker is that you can find far better rosés at the same price point. Wines with structure, acidity, and real food pairing ability. If White Zinfandel is training wheels, mass market Moscato is a tricycle with streamers. We get the appeal, it's sweet, fizzy, and approachable. But we need to talk about what you're actually drinking. The Muscat grape family is one of the oldest domesticated wine grapes in the world, with roots stretching back thousands of years to ancient Egypt and Persia. The grape itself is legendary. What modern mass production has done to it is not. Real Moscato d'Asti from Italy's Piedmont region is a beautiful wine, lightly sparkling, delicately sweet, with notes of orange blossom, peach, and apricot, and just 5 to 6% alcohol. The problem is that most Moscato on American shelves isn't that. The cheap stuff is made by stopping fermentation early or adding grape concentrate, then overcarbonating it to hide the lack of complexity. You're basically drinking alcoholic Sprite with a wine label. Some bottles reach 60 to 100 grams of residual sugar per liter, soda-level sweetness that's closer to a candy bar than a wine. Social media hasn't helped. Moscato became the girls' night wine, the I don't really like wine, the one you're expected to add fruit to just to make it interesting. And when you have to doctor your wine to enjoy it, that's usually a bad sign. Pinot Grigio is everywhere. Weddings, corporate events, chain restaurants, and that ubiquity is the problem. Most people don't know Pinot Grigio and Pinot Gris are the same grape. The difference is region and style. Italy's Pinot Grigio is light, crisp, and neutral, while Alsace's Pinot Gris is richer, fuller-bodied, sometimes off-dry or sweet. The Italian style took over the U.S. in the late 90s and early 2000s as the safe choice. In succeeding, it became the lowest common denominator. Mass-market Pinot Grigio is like slightly alcoholic water with a whisper of lemon. Grapes are harvested for quantity, machine-picked, fermented in giant stainless steel tanks, and bottled fast. The result? Virtually no personality, depth, or complexity. Just crisp acidity and maybe a hint of citrus. It's the background music of wine, forgettable and replaceable. Yes, excellent Pinot Grigios exist. Alto Adige in Italy and Oregon's Pinot Gris can be stunning. But the $8 mass market stuff? If you've made it this far, you're probably realizing you've been drinking some questionable wines. Hit that like button if any of these have been in your fridge, and drop a comment telling me which one hurt the most to hear about. We're just getting started, and the wines coming up are going to surprise you. Subscribe so you don't miss our next ranking video where we tackle red wines, and trust me, that's going to be even more controversial than this one. Now let's get into the wines that actually deserve your money. This one's controversial, and we know it. Chardonnay is the most popular white wine in the U.S., making up roughly 40 to 45% of white wine sales. California alone has around 90,000 to 95,000 acres planted, several times more than any other white variety. So putting it at number 7 might seem harsh, but we're not ranking all Chardonnay. We're talking about the over-oaked, over-buttered, candy-flavored style that dominated the American market for decades and still shows up too often on wine lists. Chardonnay itself is a beautiful neutral grape, a blank canvas for winemakers. Malolactic fermentation softens acidity into a creamy, buttery texture. Oak adds vanilla, toast, and coconut notes. These are tools, not rules. The problem started in the 1990s when California winemakers went wild with oak. Heavily toasted barrels, maximum malolactic fermentation. The wines became thick, oily, and tasted more like movie theater popcorn than fruit. Bottles coated your tongue with butter, leaving you reaching for water. The tragedy? Chardonnay doesn't need all that. Chablis, arguably the greatest expression, uses little to no new oak, aged in stainless steel or neutral barrels, producing mineral-driven, citrus-forward wines. Unoaked, or lightly oaked Chardonnay from California, Australia, or elsewhere can be crisp, refreshing, and delicious. Now we're getting into wines that actually deserve your attention. Chenin Blanc sits at number 6, and if you've never heard of it, you're not alone. It's one of the most underappreciated whites in the world, despite being incredibly versatile. A bit of history. Chenin Blanc was one of California's first popular white grapes in the 70s and 80s, used for cheap bulk juice labeled California Champagne or Chablis, neither actually Champagne or Chablis, and for inexpensive single varietal wines with residual sugar. The real story is in France's Loire Valley, where it's grown since at least the 9th century. It's also huge in South Africa, called Steen, making up roughly 18 to 20% of vineyard plantings, the country's most widely planted grape. What makes it special is range. Chenin Blanc can be bone dry or dessert sweet, still or sparkling, mineral and austere or fruity and lush. Its high acidity gives it incredible aging potential. Top Loire Valley. Examples can age for decades, sometimes 50-plus years. Flavors include quince, honey, chamomile, green apple, pear, and sometimes a waxy lanolin quality that works beautifully. Dry versions pair perfectly with food, cutting through creamy dishes and complementing lighter fare. If Chenin Blanc is underappreciated, Riesling is straight up misunderstood. It sits at number 5 and would rank higher if not for decades of a bad reputation it's still trying to shake off. Riesling is one of the world's great white grapes, right alongside Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. Sommeliers and chefs love it for versatility. It pairs with everything from spicy Thai food to delicate seafood to fatty pork. Its high acidity, intense aromatics, and aging potential rival any white wine on earth. So why do so many people think Riesling is just a sweet beginner wine? Blame the 1970s. Cheap German wines, particularly Liebfraumilch, often not pure Riesling, flooded the American market. Sweet, low alcohol, and marketed as easy drinking, they became hugely popular, peaked, then fell out of favor. That association stuck. What people don't realize, Riesling can be bone dry to dessert sweet. German labels use Trocken, dry, and Halbtrocken, off-dry, while Cabernet, Spätlese, and Auslese indicate grape ripeness, which can translate to dry or sweet. The grape is highly aromatic, but that doesn't mean it has to be sweet. Unlike most grapes, Riesling is rarely blended. You're usually drinking 100% Riesling. Winemakers feel blending would dilute its character. Flavors range from white peach, apricot, lime, honey, and petrol, yes, that classic aged aroma, with minerality shaped by the soil. Its heartland is Germany's Mosel and Rheingau, but top examples also come from Alsace, Austria, Australia's Clare and Eden Valleys, and Washington State. Number 4 might surprise those less familiar with the wine world, Albarino. This Spanish white from Galicia has been quietly winning over critics and consumers, and it's time it got more recognition. Albarino grows in Rías Baixas, a cool, wet coastal region where the Atlantic meets ancient terraces. That maritime influence defines its character. The wine is high in acidity with a slightly saline mineral quality, tasting like the ocean breeze. Flavors include white peach, citrus, subtle almond, and that signature salinity, perfect with seafood like octopus, goose barnacles, and fresh shellfish. What makes Albarino special is its weight. It's not light and neutral like Pinot Grigio, nor heavy and oaky like some Chardonnays. It sits in the sweet spot, structured but not overwhelming. Alcohol usually hovers around 12 to 13%, giving it body without heat. The grape is also grown in Portugal as Alvarinho, a key component of Vinho Verde, especially in Monção e Melgaço, Spanish. Rías Baixas versions are often more concentrated and complex, particularly as single varietal wines. This wine is going places. Grab a bottle from Pazo de Señorans or Martin Kodak's, chill it, pair it with oysters or shrimp, and see why the Spanish white is climbing the ranks. At number 3, we have the wine almost everyone likes, Sauvignon Blanc. Crisp, refreshing, zippy, with enough character to be interesting without being polarizing. If Riesling is misunderstood and Albarino is the hidden gem, Sauvignon Blanc is the reliable friend who always shows up. 2 regions define it: Loire Valley, France, Sancerre, Pouilly-Fumé, and Marlborough, New Zealand. The French style is elegant, mineral-driven, with citrus and a flinty, sometimes smoky quality. New Zealand burst onto the scene in the late 80s with intense aromatics and tropical fruit, passion fruit, gooseberry, and yes, what wine nerds call cat pee on a gooseberry bush. Its vibrant acidity makes it a sommelier's dream. It pairs with tangy dishes, sharp cheeses, seafood, salads, goat cheese, and cuts through rich, fatty foods. Unsure what to drink with a meal? Reach for Sauvignon Blanc. While often stainless steel fermented to preserve freshness, some are blended with Semillon and oak-aged, producing white Bordeaux, richer, layered, and age-worthy. California, South Africa, Chile, and Australia also make excellent versions, each with regional flair. California splits between grassy/herbal styles and richer Fumé Blanc styles. This might be the most controversial placement, Viognier at number 2. But stick with us. There's a reason this underrated grape deserves it. Viognier rarely gets attention, yet it's a prototypical white varietal. It hails from France's Rhône Valley, specifically Condrieu, where some of the world's most expensive and sought-after whites come from. The grape nearly went extinct in the 1960s, only about 20 acres remained. Dedicated Condrieu winemakers saved it, and in recent decades, New World regions like California and Australia revived it. Viognier is full-bodied and intensely aromatic. The nose bursts with honeysuckle, orange blossom, and jasmine. The palate is rich and oily, with peach, apricot, nectarine, pear, and sometimes spice or ginger. What makes it special is balance, aromatic intensity with refreshing acidity. It's rich enough for heavier dishes, but never cloying. Pair it with pork, roast chicken, moderately spiced Asian cuisine, or salmon. Texture is key, round, almost viscous, luxurious without sweetness. Oak can add complexity, but the best let the grape's natural aromatic shine. At number 1, sitting at the peak of white wine, we have premium Chablis and white Burgundy. Yes, it's Chardonnay, but expressed in its purest, most perfect form. Burgundy is Chardonnay's birthplace. Winemakers here have spent centuries learning to let terroir speak louder than technique. Chablis in northern Burgundy grows on ancient Kimmeridgian limestone with fossilized oyster shells. The wines are flinty, steely, saline, and razor sharp, with little to no oak, letting fruit and mineral shine. Further south in the Côte d'Or, villages like Meursault, Pouligny-Montrachet, Chassagne-Montrachet, white Burgundy is richer and layered. Oak is used judiciously, creating creamy but not buttery wines, complex but not heavy, with citrus, white flowers, hazelnuts, and signature Burgundian minerality. What makes these wines number one is transparency. You can taste the vineyard in every sip. A Grand Cru from Montrachet differs from a Premier Cru from Meursault, which differs from a village-level Chablis. Quality white Burgundy also ages beautifully. 10, 20, even 30 years, evolving from fresh fruit to dried fruit, honey, and nuts, while keeping a bright, mineral backbone. Prices reflect this quality. Grand Cru bottles can cost hundreds or thousands, while village-level wines from good producers range $40 to $80. It's an investment that pays off in pure drinking pleasure. Premium Chablis and white Burgundy represent the highest expression of white wine. Balance, precision, terroir, and the magic when great grapes meet centuries of masterful winemaking. This is the wine that converts red wine drinkers, makes critics weep, and reminds us why we fell in love with wine. The takeaway? Grape, region, and winemaking matter, and so does knowing what you're drinking. If this changed how you think about white wine, hit like, share with anyone still buying by labels, and comment which ranking shocked you most. Viognier at 2 or Chardonnay lower than you expected? Subscribe for more. Next up, red wines. Controversial alert, plus deep dives into rosé, sparkling, and wine truths no one talks about. Drink better, not more. Life's too short for bad wine. Cheers!